wanting to meet with other senior executives in the data and analytics space? In an environment that is created for connection and inspiration? Then why not join one of our in-person conferences? We have events all over the world, and you can find out the ones closest to you by visiting coriniumintelligence.com/events.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our June edition of the Leading Female Exec monthly panel discussion. It is wonderful to have so many of you in the comments already. Hello to Brenda, Amy, Munya, and Marendeni as well. Thank you for joining us. I hope you have all your questions ready for us today, because really I only have one planned, and that is, are data lakes dead? Now, when we plan for these sessions, and there is a plan generally speaking, we think about the questions we want to ask and areas we want to explore. And this one seems like there's a little bit of a debate around whether they are in fact dead or not. So I'm excited to bring on today's panel, and we're going to have a really great conversation. But as I say, get your thoughts into the comments, get your questions in there. It's why we do it live, because we want to have the engagement from you. So without further ado, let's welcome the panel today. And we do have an all-star global panel joining us. So to start with, let's do a quick round of introductions and then just a quick summary on where you stand on this debate. Are data lakes dead? Mina, lovely to see you. How are you doing?
Good, lovely to be here again this month. My name is Minna Kärhä. I'm a data strategy consultant, so I help organizations to create impact with better data and analytics. And my answer to your questions, are data lake dead, is no, they are not dead. Short. Okay,
no, I like it. We'll dive into reasons behind in a moment. Maritza, so great to see you virtually. I mean, last week I had the absolute pleasure of seeing you in person, but back to virtual this week. How are you doing?
Fantastic, Catherine. It's lovely to be back. So I'm Maritza Curry. I am the head of data at BNP Paribas Personal Finance South Africa. We trade here as RCS Group. So, you know, Catherine, how many times I have heard this in my career. You can just replace data lake with data warehouse, cube, self-service BI, etc., etc. And I haven't seen this prediction realize at all. So no, I do not think data lakes are dead. I think it's our data dreams and hopes that's dying, but not the data lake.
Oh, some strong sentiments here. No pressure to the next three ladies, but someone's going to have to take the opposite view. Otherwise, we're just all going to have an agreement and finish early. Okay, super. Priscilla Lazola, thank you for joining us in the comments. Great to see you joining us in today. Risha, for the very first time, welcome to the Leading Female Exec panel. It's great to have you join us. If you wouldn't mind giving us a quick round of your introduction and then your thoughts. Are they dead indeed?
Thanks, Catherine. Thanks for having me here. Well, it's not my first time working with you, but I'm excited to be part of the panel. My name is Richa. I am an engineering leader for a company called Tecton AI, and we're in the feature platform space. So we deal with data infra, in and out, thinking about what are the needs of the data scientists, machine learning engineers, what is the data of tomorrow going to look like, etc. So according to me, are data lakes dead? I would say a big no. But have the data lakes evolved? That's a big yes. Because the persona that's needing the data, the speed that we need the data, the purpose for which we need the data, the considerations around humans and the factors how we utilize the data, that's all changing. So I would believe that data lakes have continued to evolve and are at a maturity where we're going to be able to support all of the needs downstream.
Love that. And we'll pick on that a little bit further into the discussion. Thank you, Risha. Beza, and I must admit, awesome background going on today. I perhaps won't make you take a guitar off the wall and give us a tune. Give us an intro and then your thoughts. Are data lakes dead?
I would love to, but I have zero music ability. This is my brother's office. I'm just parachuting in. So pleasure to be with these lovely ladies. Are they dead? I would say they're evolving. Some aspects are dead and other aspects are evolving, but just like fashion, you know, everything all becomes new again. So I would like to approach that, you know, it depends on the organization, depends on the fit, but I see it and increasing for other types of approaches. So I'll just leave it at that.
I love that. I always love the comparison to fashion because I think it's a really good analogy to grip onto for this one. Thank you, Beza. And then our final panelist joining us today, but last but certainly not least, Dee, so great to see you. Give us an introduction and then your thoughts, please.
You too, and hello everybody. Thank you for having me. I am Dee Samra. I'm Director of Data Excellence at Liberty Global, which is a global telecommunications organization, and sort of just driving the excellence in how we manage and do our data, basically. Are data lakes dead? Absolutely not. So sorry for the consensus, but they certainly don't have the celebrity status that they used to have. Is they, the needs, as Rita was saying, are different now, and it's that speed to access data that really holds data lakes back in being the latest thing. Is we've evolved.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's really interesting because obviously last month we were talking about the buzzwords and moving beyond that as well. And I think it's interesting that we're having this discussion now and saying that we've evolved. And I love that quote there, Dee, about the celebrity status of data lakes. And I think that's in itself really interesting, especially when we think about the previous conversations we've had with executive buy-in and the words that perhaps they're hearing and thinking they should be talking to us about. Has that now changed? Now, if I take a look at the comments here. So we've got Lazola saying the old definition of data lake is dead. Sherifat saying data lakes definitely have their imperatives. They have evolved and they are evolving. So thank you so much for getting involved. And do keep any questions coming in as well. I'd be more than happy to put them to our panel. So why are we talking about this? What is going on in our organizations for this conversation to be relevant now? Because I know when we were planning the session, you were all really excited to talk about this. So from your perspective, why are you wanting to have this discussion? What's in it for you in really wanting to promote this internally in your organization? What are you trying to drive from a resource perspective or a budget perspective or a strategic perspective? What's going on for each of you? I'm going to ask that and dive a bit deeper if you don't mind. Dee, I'll come to you first.
So as I mentioned before, it's really that speed to react to data. I think, especially since post-pandemic, there's so much more activity online. There's so much more data being collated. Being able to react very quickly has become absolutely imperative for any business now. I think if you weren't a data business before the pandemic, you definitely are now to have survived. And that change. Just across, and that's global, right? It's not local to any particular area. It's actually across the entire world. So it makes that that requirement to be able to access and get and be able to draw insights from different sets of data much more quickly than we ever have done before. Imperative for you to to really have that that position in your market. So that to me is the most fundamental issue that's kind of putting data lakes to bed. Data lakes to bed. But now everyone's talking about data lake houses, but it's all about people, data fabric, data mesh. It's all really about how quickly can we enable, leverage technology to get us that access to the right set of data. But how do we know what the right set of data is that I want access to? And then how do I quickly get access to it? That's fundamentally what we all need to try and achieve.
Yeah. And I think, as you say, that the pandemic did a wonderful job of increasing that time to market, that time to decision that we needed to condense down to make those actions very, very timely. But I think there is that piece there, as you mentioned, around the quality of those decisions as well, of ensuring that data is of good quality, that it's been verified, that biases have been accounted for and all the rest, so that you're able to make those decisions quickly. There's a very then different industry in terms of where you're coming from. What are the considerations that you're thinking of when we're talking data lakes? What's behind it for you?
I think, as Dee mentioned, that you have this evolving, but the whole, evolving process as far as how information gets stored. The purpose of the storage is insights and, insights to drive decision making. So I think for us is fit. I think in our industries, especially government, what we figured out is that the old warehouse or the legacy systems were not going to go away because they're so integral to processes that were built a while ago. So disentangling them and moving on to just a data lake doesn't seem cost a lot of organizations. So I know Dee mentioned sort of the data lake house. You're keeping your data warehouse, but you're expanding that with, depending if you're collecting unstructured data, other types of information, especially in healthcare, you're collecting genomics data, other data, they don't really fit well within structured frameworks. So then you have to think about, okay, we have these processes that work really well. These processes are definitely new. They were built after we built the data warehouse. We need another environment that we can get value out of that. So I always see that as an approach to build value within that pipeline.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. And it's interesting then, as I mentioned, kind of teeing you up about the different industry. I think that's where this panel is fantastic, where you've got so many different industries, and the types of data as well that you're going to be accessing as well is another layer on top of that, for sure. Risha, when you're thinking data lakes, and again, it's interesting to hear the different phrases, data lake house, and obviously we've heard the term data swamp as well. I mean, what are you considering in this aspect?
Yeah, sure. So I come from a little bit of a different angle to this, because for us as creator of a software for a service, it's very important for us to understand the evolving technology needs. So we work with companies to serve their needs, and the companies could range from various sizes. The complexity of data, the type of data, the need at which they need the inference all varies. And not to forget that now when we're in the data space, it's not just the speed, but we also have to keep in mind how we are handling the data. We have to take into account a lot of the policies that are coming out, GDPR, et cetera. So we are not immune from that. So that's why it is very imperative for us to really understand these ecosystems, understand the tech architecture practices, so that we can be the best in practice of how we put that into our architecture. So at the end of the day, for us, it's more important to understand where the various companies are headed. What are the different problems they're trying to solve? What is near and center to their heart, so that we can make sure that we're providing that as a practice in the software as well.
100%. And if by complete magic, Sharifat had just commented as well, saying there's also a factor of focusing on technology before considering what the business requirements are and what business process or governance we need to place to manage the data. And I think it's something this panel we always come back to be talking about, is that business need, not necessarily business want, but what do they actually need? What is the essence behind the questions they're asking, and how we can best set them up for success as well. Maritza, when it comes to data lakes, data swamps, data warehouses, and lake houses, and all the various other things, which all start to blend, if I'm being honest, what are your considerations in this debate? What are the things that you're kind of pushing internally in your organization?
In banking and financial services, we have this conflict between operating in a highly regulated industry, so making sure that we consider data management and data governance, but then on the other hand, it's also an extremely competitive industry. So we also have to have the flexibility where we can experiment and where we can start implementing some of the more emerging technologies and approaches and capabilities. So for us, it's really around understanding all of our use cases and how do we build a data platform or a data ecosystem that has all these different elements, answering different types of business questions or catering to different audiences. So our data warehouse, has a very specific purpose. In our organization, the data lake has a very specific purpose with a specific audience. So I think when we start looking at data fabric, data lake houses, etc., then it's really going to be around, do we have a use case? Do we have a problem that we're trying to solve with this new approach or with this new technology? And how does that fit into our data ecosystem?
Amazing. Thank you, Maritza. Mina, I'll come to you to round us off on that. Have you got any additional thoughts?
Well, I really also agree what was said earlier. I think Dee at least said that it's really the key focus is getting the data to the people so that they can use it for more informed decisions or do their work in a better way. And I think many times when talking about these architectures and technologies, we tend to forget that is really the goal, and that is also the reason why I said in the beginning that data lakes are not dead, because if you have a functioning data lake, there's no need to start replacing that, but instead kind of building on top of that, or building something to complement that, and keeping it in mind that it's at the end of the day, to get the data to the people who need it should be the focus. And that is also when working with organizations, mainly the thing that we try to highlight always, that it's really not about comparing whether you need data warehouse or data lake or lake house or data mesh, or how should we implement data mesh. They are just means to achieve what you want to achieve, but still it's really about keeping the focus on the people and not ignoring or forgetting what is needed. And it's not you can have a really nice technology setup, but if you haven't really thought about who is using that and what they actually need, you will not get any value from that.
100%, almost bringing people out of the micro and out of the being in the weeds and bringing them back out to the macro, bigger picture element, and having that kind of North Star, as you say, of, this is the direction we want to be heading. Amazing. Now I'm keeping an eye on the time because, as is traditional, we are rapidly running out of it. So we have a question coming in here from Lazola saying, how do we advance to these fairly new concepts like data houses, etc., without breaking business confidence? These new data architectures are not yet fully tried and tested, and thus there's no business practices. This is a really great question because I'm sure there's many people, both on the panel but also in the audience, who have this nervousness about trying something new, but perhaps not with the full case studies to back it up. Beza, I wonder if you wouldn't mind taking that one first.
That's a great question. I think, how can you develop business confidence? So pilot test, something small where you get your hands around, test before you fully deploy within the enterprise. What I don't want to do is take a solution and deploy it across without figuring out, the bugs. And there is always issues to be solved. So I think in highly regulated industries like healthcare, we're much more cautious regarding what we deploy, how we deploy it, and for what purpose we're deploying a lot of these. So it's obviously being cognizant of the different regulations that are out there. So for us, it's a very measured approach, looking at the technology, assessing that technology, looking at the industry, figuring out the use case, and saying, okay, can we do this, pilot project? What value are we going to get from, we don't have anything for the genomics research or something else? Can we try something different? Another really important thing is figuring out, yes, you have this new technology, how will that integrate with your existing systems? Because obviously, our patient records, other records are in old legacy systems. So the integration aspect of it, I think, is really key. So we see a lot of technologies that are coming in between. They're bringing value as far as connection between your old systems and versus new technologies there. And a lot of that is moving data system to that new system and vice versa in a way that makes the data discoverable, able to change the information. Obviously, we cannot remove the source application or alter the source application. That has to stay, historically the way it is, but we're able, by moving that data across for some sort of value, either advanced analytics or insight, whatever it is. So I see that it's not necessarily the container environments, data lakehouse, lakehouse or data warehouse, doesn't matter what your containerized environment is, how you're storing, is the value of actually move information. I thought Mina talked about, like data mesh, other things that not makes your data discoverable, but also manageable as an asset.
Wow, what an amazing answer. Thank you so much, Beza. Maritza, did you want to add some flavor to that one as well?
I do. I think it's such an incredibly good question. And I think this is one of the reasons why the data and analytics industry is seen as an industry that's not delivering, because we jump onto these technical or technology bandwagons right from the start because we think it's a silver bullet, it's going to solve all of our problems. But Lazola is quite right. It's still new. So we have no idea what skills will be required. We've got no idea, is it scalable? We have no idea, will it fit into our current IT landscape? So those challenges and those questions come out over time. And as these challenges come out of time, we have to resolve them. Disillusionment set in. And that's when we get to this point where we're saying, okay, but the data lake is dead. And I think as an industry and as data leaders, we've got to be very upfront, very transparent when we go down these new technology journeys. We've got to be transparent with our executives and say, this is going to be experimental. We don't understand what all of the ins and outs are, and we're going to learn over time. And if you don't have that transparency, then that is when you do run into issues. And like I said when I started, this is why we are seen as an industry that's not delivering.
Yeah. And I think, again, we've spoken about this extensively in the past about kind of the personality that it takes to stand up in a ballroom and go, you know what, we may not have all the answers for you now. We're trying something new for these reasons. And that can be quite intimidating to do, especially when, more now than ever, we are under budget restraints and there's lots of question marks over resources, etc. So it can be a very challenging time to try something new. But in the same breath, it can be a very rewarding time to be doing something new that could be returning a lot of investment as well. Now, we are getting towards the end of today's panel, but I did just want to quickly pop up another question we have had in. Asking about the views of our panelists on how serverless Redshift and other serverless solutions can impact data lakes. It would be especially relevant to data regulatory constraints when operating multi markets. Goodness me, what a big question that I've left right till the end to dive into. Risha, I wonder if you could add some flavor to this.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. Interesting question. So I'll answer this question in two parts. One is the solution that things like serverless Redshift brings to data lakes. And second is the ownership and the governance problem that we're also trying to solve with the evolution of data lakes, where proprietary tools like this can help. So the first thing is data lakes in general are massive. They tend to be slow, and they're also serving different teams, different personas. They have different volumes of data they're working with, different latency requirements, etc. So if there are teams that are working on large sums of data, they don't know how to really expect what the volume of data they could be working against. So they occasionally see spikes in data. For teams like those, more nuanced approaches like using serverless Redshift, which is like on the fly, on demand, you can use it. That's something that really comes in handy. The second thing is around the governance of it. So the evolution of data lake has happened in a way that the entire data in the lake has been decomposed into small digestible chunks. And that's where the ownership comes in from respective teams. So if there's a team that's supporting MarTech, there's an ops team, there's a sales team, there's a different team that's actually doing data analytics. The data from all of this is going into one data lake, but the ownership, the management of it is something that's residing with the particular team. So in this particular case, if a team has the need, again, to work with the volumes of data, like I said, yet governing only a small portion of the data that feeds from into data lake, that way you can customize the architecture across the teams to be able to use things like serverless, Redshift, and then there are many other tools which are also available for them to be able to do that.
Gosh, we fit in a lot of value in half an hour, I must admit. Amazing. Thank you so much, Risha. Just looking at the time, we could probably squeeze in one last answer. Dee, do you want to add some flavor into that one as well?
Yeah, I was just, in terms, I've not used AWS Redshift specifically, but just looking at, the use of cloud and the whole premise under which we go to cloud, which is, being able to quickly spin up environments, quickly share and access data, and the knock-on effect that has from a legislative point of view. We've got next year, we've got further legislation coming in around the sharing and the use of data, not just specific to PI anymore. It's looking at all data. We've got the ethics piece. But as we get quicker at sharing that data, we also then need to be much quicker at being able to govern and understand who's accessing that data, how quickly we can provision that and manage or oversee the data that's being shared, and how that's then being used as well, and looking at consent and things like that as well. It's making that challenge a lot harder, because you've got to do everything that much quicker, because the capability in terms of technology is there. As Redshift does, spinning up data lakes, etc. It's a much bigger challenge going forwards, and it's going to be interesting this next year, especially with legislation changing so much.
100%. Certainly one of those topics that we could definitely review in, say, 6 or even 12 months' time, and see where we will stand and the impacts that we will be having. But just like that, we are at the end of our time today. So thank you, each of you, for your candid responses, and for our audience as well for getting involved. A really, really great discussion today. Now, just before we leave you today, just a few calls to action from my side. Of course, we have the new revamped Business of Data newsletter, which you can subscribe to right here on LinkedIn. So it will come into your inbox every week. We post it on Tuesday, so you can see all the latest updates via our content insights and opportunities for you to get involved as well. And 2 of those opportunities here at the Business of Data, we have our upcoming Business of Data Festival happening literally a month today, which is a global broadcast, and we will be going around the world to hear from the best executives. So please do register for that. We would love to see you there. And even more exciting, I say even more exciting, and I feel like I made a faux pas there, but we've got the Business of Data Awards in October, which you are able to nominate yourself for now. That is North American based. So if you have a peer, or if you yourself are based in North America and you want to find out more, then please do visit the Business of Data platform, where you can find out all that information. But for now, we will leave it there. So thank you so much for joining us.
Wanting to meet with other senior executives in the data and analytics space? In an environment that is created for connection and inspiration? Then why not join one of our in-person conferences? We have events all over the world, and you can find out the ones closest to you by visiting coriniumintelligence.com/events.